When I arrived at the gym today, it was slightly less busy than it has been over the last few weeks when I was doing squats. So I was actually able to record myself from a bit of a different angle here. Right off the bat, however, I noticed that my foot placement was probably not the best. I could have actually had them slightly forward, but from this perspective at least, I do not really see that much forward leaning on my torso, so that's actually pretty good. The angle that I've been accustomed to while rewatching my squat reps in recent past has been slightly off to the back and also a bit lower than this position in here. I probably think that there is a bit of bias while looking at it from this specific angle also, but I think that also looking at it from the back low angle maybe overemphasized a little bit what I felt was my torso position. And this is going to be coming up in the next couple of sets, so it's going to exemplify what I was trying to say right now. When I'm going down from this position here, it looks like I'm leaning forward a little bit, and because I have a bit of an upper back rounding, it seems a bit more than it actually is while looking at it from a different perspective. At least in this second set and in the last one as well, I was a bit more conscious of my heel placement on these little plates, and therefore I was able to actually get into a better position structurally speaking while I was distributing my weight equally between the floor and the plates, and it didn't really feel like it was making that big of a difference, but I think it's good overall because it doesn't really put too much pressure on the mid of my right plantar fascia, which is being kind of iffy over the last few weeks or so, and I do not really want to be poking the area in any way if I can avoid that. And I also added a third set on these weighted knee raises. I kept the 8 kilo dumbbell, and in the first one I was doing 20, the second one I was doing 17 I think, and I kept the third one at 10. I will be cranking out a few more reps in the next session on the third set, just to slowly ease my way onto the next jumping weight, which is going to be 10 kilos. Moving on to the second superset of the session, when I was doing some loaded back extensions and the upright rows. I stayed at 25 kilos for 2 sets on the back extensions. This angle is actually giving me a good perspective on the side, so I can see that my low back was engaged in a good way, my core bracing was on point, and I was able to go to a good depth at the point where I started feeling a good stretch in my hamstrings that wasn't really giving me any discomfort in the back of the right knee. So foot positioning was probably also key. I'm trying to keep my feet slightly pointing outwards, and that gives me the feeling that I am actually engaging a bit more the glutes, and the stretch on my hamstring is going the right way basically. Sometimes I feel that if my feet are just pointing more forward, I am not really able to get that same stretch while also reaching that level of hip flexion. So when I'm at this 45-degree hyper, I'm always tending to keep those feet a bit flared out, which is a bit different than when I'm doing the Romanian deadlift. At that point, a more deadlift oriented stance of my feet, where they're pointing a bit more forward, is actually preferable. And I'm not sure if this has anything to do with the fact that I'm using a machine as opposed to just standing, or if it's just that the fact that my body is in a different orientation in space when I'm doing these as opposed to the Romanian deadlifts. But this is the way that it feels, so I guess I'll just roll with it. It actually feels a bit more natural, extroverting my hips, the sockets a bit outwards. It actually creates a bit more room for my quads to sit, so that they're not really pushed against by the padding, and sometimes it actually feels a bit uncomfortable when I'm in that position with my legs pointed forward. Not that much to say about the upright rows. I recently went up in weight, so I was using 2 14-kilo dumbbells, and I'm slowly pushing them towards sets of 15. At some point I will be adding a third set just to provide some extra volume and progressing these 3 sets as I'm usually doing. And this is the last part of the session where I was getting some more upper body work in the form of antagonizing supersets, doing pushing and pulling. Started off with some dips where I was resetting each repetition from the floor. And since the volume on dips has been a bit low over the last couple of weeks, because there's been a few instances where I had to combine 2 sessions together and sacrifice dips for something that was a bit higher in intensity, I felt like I was getting all that I could into reaching 15 repetitions on the first set. Second one was 12, and in between I was doing these tuck front lever raises, which I did on the beam for the first set, but that's actually quite more challenging than this way that I did it. Man, these are tough at the end of the session. Ciao.